Hello, it's Dawn Michelle and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to do another mini collection and I'm going to share with you all of my angel decks. So I have gathered up all of the tarot and oracle decks that I have that are specifically angel related. I didn't include anything that's like in that sort of star seedy type of energy or anything that is like in that light worker realm. I kept real specific to just actual angels. So I thought we would go through them all today and I'm just going to share with you and we're going to have a little play looking at my angel decks. So we're going to start with the quintessential angel deck, which is a Radley Valentine angel tarot cards. This is actually, aesthetically speaking, not my vibe, not my jam, but I do love this deck. And one of the things that I really enjoy about the Angel Tarot is that it has a really beautiful mix of angels in here, but there's also other like sort of celestial energy. It's also very elementally based, which I really appreciate. So we have like earth for pentacles, we have air. Also in the pentacles, we have a lot of sort of fairy type creatures. In the suit of air, which is swords, we have unicorns. So our fire is related to our wands, and we have generally dragon-y related. I say that. Yeah, dragons. Dragons are cool. And then in our water, orcas, there's my orcas. We have marine life and or mermaids is really what's in the suit of water. Again, connecting to the cups. And I think that's all of them. And then in the major arcana, we have all of the archangels, which is fantastic. So one of the things that I really like about this deck, and let's just do a little flip through. I can pick them all up. I do not like the cardstock. I do not like the glossy, but this deck is a very solid reader. It does have those typical sort of Radley Valentine holdover from the Dorian Virtue of the big messages on the bottom of the cards. And honestly, that is one of the things that I love about this deck. It reads very much like an oracle in that sense. But as I mentioned in a previous video on working with angels, that I see these actually as messages, not so much from the self as I would just a traditional tarot deck, where there wouldn't be a messages, there would just be the title of what the card is, right? The Ace of Air, the Ace of Swords. Oh, look, I have an Ace of Swords sitting right here. Whereas this, I take something like this and I'm like, this is just a message from me, from my inner self, my higher self. These I see more as being actually messages from the divine realm. And I think it works beautifully for that. And I do love that in this deck we have those other aspects of that kind of divine energy. And it's a little bit magical, right? Because we've got the unicorns and we've got the mermaids and we've got the fairies. Again, those are all things that I feel like could very much be personified energies that you could work with in very much the same way that you do angels. I also really like the messages. It does lean really positive, and you know, there's lots of orcas in this deck, which just makes me happy. The artwork is not my favorite. I'll be perfectly honest. In terms of like, it's kind of that old school, digital collage. I have worse though. So like, honestly, it's not bad. But it is a little bit more in that kind of old school, just there's a lot of stuff going on in these cards. They're very bright. The coloration is sometimes a little bit garish, but like, I mean, good example. Again, artwork's not really my favorite, but it reads beautifully. And I love that it provides me those messages that do feel like they kind of come from elsewhere. And the Queen of Cups has orcas all around her. I mean, it's just beautiful. A lot of the majors have been renamed as well, which is interesting. We have ego instead of the devil. I can get on board with that. We have life experience instead of the tower. That one's a little bit more of a miss for me, but I still can get where they're coming from it. So, you know, it's that kind of typical, I don't want to say nice washed, because this deck doesn't really, even though the messages are really nice, it will call you out when it needs to. And I've definitely had it call me out. So it's a beautiful deck in that sense. And it's a really solid reader. It's real sticky. Hopefully that will work itself out over time. as these sticky decks tend to do. It's definitely oracle size, so it's kind of a chunky monkey, but I really enjoy working with it. It's not a deck that I work with often. In fact, there's only a handful of decks in this collection that I work with often. These are more every once in a while type of a deck. This is definitely a deck, as I mentioned in my other video, that I use for kind of more mundane communication with the angelic energy or the angelic realm. So it's a great one. Again, aesthetically, not really my jam, but it reads like a dream. And I really enjoy Bradley Valentine decks. You'll see I have another one here that we'll take a look at. So that one is the Angel Tarot. So another Angel Tarot deck that I have is the Archangel Power Tarot. And this one, I'm not a fan of the artwork in this particular deck. And I don't know which one came first, but I like the artwork in the Angel Tarot better than this. Again, but it's the same type of cardstock, same size, same glossy, same sticky, all of that. And it has a very similar setup in the Major Arcana, where we just have the archangels as being the basic energies, you know, that we're tapping into. We have Metatron for the Chariot. One of the things that doesn't really throw me is like the archangels are repeated throughout this deck a lot of times. So yeah, I mean, it's just a little thing too. And clearly you can see this one's in order because it's not one that I've really worked with much. And the reason is, although I like it and I keep it, the reason is actually in the Minor Arcana. And the way that the suits are structured, because as I mentioned in my other video, which I've referred to like 900 times now, I have very specific Minor Arcana associations to certain archangels. I keep this one because I like it, even though it doesn't align with my personal representation. In this deck, Raphael is connected to the element of water and the suit of cups, and that's, which I get for the healing thing, right? It totally makes sense. But for me personally, Archangel Raphael connects to Pentacles and the suit of, and the suit of, yeah, the suit of Pentacles and the element of Earth. And that's just how I personally work with him. Again, same kind of thing where we have the great messages, exact same setup. This is the suit that doesn't connect with me because, again, this is the Pentacles, and we have Ariel here. And I believe this is the Pentacles. The artwork in this is a huge miss for me. That's one of the main reasons that I don't work with it, to be perfectly honest, besides the fact that like the suit associations don't quite align with my own personal associations. But when it comes to this kind of a deck, I prefer the other one by Bradley Valentine, the Angel one. It's really the female characters that kind of bug me. Like, I don't know. Something about the way that the wings have been done on the people in this deck, it just, I don't even know who the artist is, but it feels like it doesn't quite align for me. Some of them are done better than others though. Anyway, so we have Michael for the suit of swords. That's perfect. I can get on board with that. That's where he sits for me. And then we have Gabriel for the suit of wands. That also aligns for me. And the thing that I do love about this deck, and one of the reasons that I keep it, besides the fact that it has the archangels per Minor Arcana, which I really like, is that I like that Gabriel is depicted as a female presenting angel in this deck, and I really like that because that's how I interact with her as well. She's very much female presenting when in the work that I do with her. So I keep this deck. Obviously, it's not one that I use, but this is a keeper in my collection because I do want to work with it at some point, but mostly I'm fascinated by the structure of it, and I just kind of, I enjoy looking through it for that aspect, but it hasn't been one that I've really worked with much, to be perfectly honest with you. So that one is the Archangel Power Tarot. Totally prefer his other angel deck, but this is an interesting one too. All right, so let's move on to one of my favorite angel tarots, and I'm not really doing these in any particular order other than I'm going to do all the tarots and then show you all the oracles. This is the Influence of the Angels Tarot. This is my absolute favorite angel deck. Yeah. It is. I had to think about that. Like, I've got a couple of them that I do really, really enjoy, but I feel like this deck really represents that kind of the angel as the connection between the mundane and the celestial world. There's our world and the divine realm. And I think it just works beautifully in that sense. This is my favorite type of art style and depiction when it comes to angel energy. I very much love this kind of old Renaissance style artwork. As I mentioned, I have no idea if it's actually Renaissance. I could be totally wrong because I'm not an art historian. To me, anything that looks old is always Renaissance. It's just the way it is. But I love this art style. And I've had a couple of other decks that have similar art styles, but I always go back to this one, and I've rehomed several of them and kept this one because this one is not only a solid reader as a tarot deck, I love it as an angel deck as well. So it kind of really blends those two things together beautifully, where we get that angel energy, we get the angelic messages in the guidebook, which are just fantastic. And I'm not really going to go into the guidebooks for these decks except for this one, because I really think that the guidebook really helps this deck shine. Because in each card, or for each card, we also have an angelic message. So you have the symbols, you have what's going on, where the angel is, you have meanings, you have shadow meanings, and then you have the angelic message. And that for me is where this deck absolutely shines. I always work with the guidebook with this particular deck. And I think it's the only guidebook that I consistently work with when it comes to my angel decks. Most of the time, for most of them, the messages are on the card, so I don't need to anyway, but the angelic message is always super spot on with this deck. But I love that it's super versatile because I can use it just as a total tarot, and like this is one of my favorite decks to work with in December. It has a very December feel to me, almost kind of like that Yule, Christmas energy, that it's just very Victorian in that sense. Again, here we go, me mixing all of my time periods, which I have absolutely no idea of. But it feels like Victorian Christmas in a deck, and so I almost always pull this deck out in December. But I do use it quite frequently for angel work as well, because it does work beautifully for tapping into the angel energy as well. So again, this is my absolute favorite angel deck in terms of not only the artwork, but in terms of how it reads and the versatility of this deck. And that's the influence of the Angels Tarot. So another big time favorite deck for me that, like, I went back and forth about whether to even include this one, because is it an angel deck? Not technically, but it does have a suit of angels. And I feel, again, very much like this deck connects into the, kind of helps create that bridge between the divine and the angelic realm. Between the mundane and the divine realm, with that angelic realm being directly in between. This is the Tarot of Light, formerly the Art of Love. This is the new edition, which I repurchased. And there's a lot of angels in this deck. There's a whole suit of angels. But we also have like trees and stars, but there's a lot of angel energy represented throughout this deck. And I definitely feel like it taps into that kind of very accessible celestial energy, which is very much how I see the angel realm, as I mentioned in my last video. It's all about kind of that stepping stone, that conduit between the mundane realm and the divine realm. And I feel like this deck, even though it's not fully angels, I feel like it does do that quite well. It really does act as a conduit between myself and the divine realm, or the angelic realm, really, because it doesn't go quite as high. It doesn't quite reach goddess level, as I tend to say. It's more about just kind of reaching into the kind of cosmic connection. This is another like tarot that functions very much like an oracle for me. I do really like the keywords, and a lot of times I will pull cards from this deck and read it strictly as an oracle. Totally ignoring the tarot associations. Sometimes I will read it as a tarot, and sometimes I will read it completely intuitively and ignore anything on any text on the cards and just look at the picture and see what it says to me. This is kind of one of my favorite decks for transition period times between when I kind of transition from work life to home life, because that happens all in the same basic space for me. And so I like to use this deck a lot for that as well. But this is one of my favorite tarot decks. It's in a gorgeous Peggy bag that she made for me, and I absolutely love it. So that is the Tarot of Light. The guidebook is also quite wonderful for this deck, and it's one that I will get into on occasion, but just not all the time. Well, let's shift a moment and go into the sort of darker realm of angel energy. This is the Dark Angels Tarot, and this is an interesting little deck. The artwork isn't always necessarily my favorite. It's kind of like a Monet deck for me. Like from a distance, it looks really good. But if you get too up close and personal with these images, they look a little funny. That aside, this is a deck that I've been using a lot for writing work. So when I'm working on fiction, I tend to work with this deck a lot. It's also, interestingly enough, because these are two very, very different things, often a deck that I turn to when I am needing guidance with my youngest, which might sound really, really weird, but this kind of gothic, dark angel, kind of punky, grungy thing is totally my kid's style. So it definitely is one that I have started using for that, and it's worked beautifully. But it's been an interesting one. It's, again, the artwork's like not really my favorite. It's like really cool in some aspects, but in some aspects I'm like, what is going on in that card? And maybe it's just because like I'm getting older and I don't see as well as I used to, but it definitely has it has a sort of tarot of vampire feel, right, as well, that kind of dark, gothic, but it's in the angel realm, which is really, really cool. So I really love the dark aspect of the sort of fallen angel energy as well. That's definitely an energy I kind of resonate with, because it really speaks to the idea of falling from that perfect version of yourself and just learning that you are an imperfect being. I think that that's really, really cool. I've edged mine, of course, and here's the backs. I don't know if I've been showing you the backs of the rest of the cards, but that's okay. I'm not going to re-record. So yeah, this has been a really interesting one. I've used it quite a bit, and I do really enjoy it. It's got a really kind of unique, I can't get it back in the box. It's got a really unique energy, and as far as I know, still available. I purchased it not that long ago, so it's one of the newer angel decks in my collection, but I've really been enjoying working with it. So again, that's the Dark Angels Tarot. Let's talk about another deck that I've absolutely never used and only bought because it says it's the Tarot of Angels. This is, as far as I know, a still available Los Scarabeo deck, and you'll see it is still in order. Oh, that's a title card. Because I have done absolutely nothing with this deck. I'm not terribly fond of, like, it's old school Los Scarabeo, right? So it's still got all the titles on it, which is like never the favorite. Some of the images are super bizarre, and some of them are really, really cool. Like this. This is almost, that's creepy. Like that creepy dude hanging over the emperor. And some of them I really like. I think they're really, really interesting. It's definitely an older deck, so there's absolutely no diversity. I don't think there's any diversity really in any of these decks. That is something that is starting to come into being in angel decks, which I've seen with some of the newer ones. But I haven't gotten around to actually getting any of those yet, but it's an interesting deck. I'm kind of fascinated by it. I do like a lot of the minor arcana, which is kind of where my draw was for this, like the Ace of Chalices with this beautiful fountain and the dove. Again, I don't approach angels as in the biblical sense. So when I look at these, I see these as a little bit different energies, but here we have the three angels in the chalice. Here we have, this one's interesting because there's like an angel here and a bear here. So it's kind of like the divine and the human realm trying to come together to get this person to cultivate some stability in their emotional landscape. Is quite interesting. And then here we see like the devil or the fallen angel and the ascended angel. it's interesting. I really don't have anything constructive to say about this deck because, again, I haven't worked with it, but I like the minors. I like the presentation of them. This is a beautiful ace, and some of them are just like kind of funny. The Pentacles is not my favorite. There's a lot of the whole good versus evil, you know, the two devils on your shoulder. And I apologize if you can hear the dog clickety-clacky. He's just wandering around. But you see a lot of that kind of good versus evil in this, that kind of, you know, the fallen angel or the devil versus the angel thing, which is, I think, just an interesting, it's an interesting concept, right? We see it again here in the 2 and see it again here in the 3. And it's just, I don't know, it's interesting. I don't know what to think about it, really. It's the minors kind of fascinate me. So that Queen of Wands is pretty cool. It's got a little bit of an earthy feel too, which is something that I like. It feels like that's a hard card. Not my favorite. It does feel a little bit like, again, that sort of connection between the divine and the human realm, right? The divine world and our world, the mundane world. And I think that's kind of what fascinates me, the idea of channeling that energy and pulling it into something. This is a weird card, just saying. So it's got some weirdness going on in there. And sometimes I like a deck that I'm kind of like, I don't know what's going on with you. You're kind of interesting. Sometimes I enjoy that. Again, it's not a deck that I have read with or done any work with. I've just looked through it several times, but I probably will at some point do some readings with it just to see how it goes. So that is the Tarot of Angels, a completely unused deck in my collection, but an angel deck nevertheless. Okay, so let's talk real quick about one of my most used angel decks. And I think this one is actually out of print now. This is the Guardian Angel Tarot, which I do believe there is a new deck by Radleigh Valentine called the Guardian Angel Tarot, but it does not look like this at all. I don't have that one, and I've thought about getting it just to see if it has even remotely the same imagery, or I know it doesn't have the same imagery, the same messages. I'm kind of curious about that, but this is like my grandma angel deck, right? This deck fully embodies the idea of grandma energy for me. It's very nurturing. It's very supportive. I think I've shown this in many videos. I did modify mine. I trimmed off the gilding. I made it a little bit smaller. I edged it in pastel colors. I may have a mod with me. It would be very old at this point, but there might be one on my channel. I just love this deck. It's so loving and nurturing and supportive, and it feels like the ultimate hug deck. But it does have a lot of angels in it. And it is called the Guardian Angel. So that's, I guess, why it's in this collection, because it's like angel right in the title. I wouldn't necessarily see this as an angel deck, though. For me, this doesn't really tap into angel energy. It taps more into grandmother energy, or how my grandmother might see angel energy, which is very much in that biblical messengers from God type of an energy. So that's kind of an interesting way to look at it as well. But other than just having a lot of angels in it and being titled the Guardian Angel Tarot, it really isn't, it doesn't function as an angel deck for me. But it functions more as like a grandmother hug deck type of a deal. And I believe this one was the one that was the Radleigh Valentine Doreen Virtue. Again, it's out of print, and I don't know the status of its availability, but it's an angel deck in my collection, so we're taking a look. So that was the Guardian Angel Tarot. All right, let's get a couple more of the out of print decks out of the way, because I actually have quite a few in this collection. These next 4 I showed in the previous video. This is the Mary Queen of Angels deck, and outside of the fact that it says Queen of Angels, probably isn't technically an angel deck, and probably wouldn't even be included in a somebody else's angel collection. There are quite a few angelic references in the artwork. Again, this is out of print, but because it's Mary Queen of Angels, and the way that I work with Mary is as when I'm working with her in an angelic sense, is as the Queen of Angels. So as I mentioned in the other video, like she connects with that in that space for me. So I'm including her here, even though it's a little bit of an odd inclusion. But when I think of the angel energies that I work with, I definitely think of Mary as the Queen of Angels in that personification of her. And so that's definitely an aspect of angel energy that I work with. So kind of like where the Guardian Angel Tarot really isn't an angel deck, but I included it because it says angel in it. This one isn't really an angel deck, but I included it because it says angel in the title, but also because I work with this deck as an angelic energy. So it makes sense in my brain. Not sure if it will in anybody else's, but it makes sense in my brain. And there's a lot of angels in it. So we're just gonna include it because of how I work with it. Again, this is the Mary Queen of Angels, an out of print Doreen Virtue deck. All right, moving along to a couple of other Archangel specific decks. Again, these are all by Doreen Virtue. This is the Archangel Gabriel, or as I pronounce it, Gabriel, because I do see this energy a little bit differently. This is a really interesting deck. It's got some weird keywords on it, but they really never fail to connect and make some sense, even though sometimes I look at it and I'm like, what are you talking about? But the way that I work with this deck, and if you want to see that, I talked about it in another video, which I will link in the description box below because I've mentioned it like 900 times now. But this is a deck tapping into the energy of Archangel Gabriel and offering you messages and wisdom from that archangel. Again, it's another out of print deck. I don't, besides the Mary Queen of Angels, that one sometimes I see goes for stupid kind of money, but most of the time these you can still pick them up reasonably for a reasonable price secondhand on places like eBay and whatnot. And here's the backs of those. So that's, again, these four that we're looking at, the Mary Queen of Angels, the Archangel Gabriel or Gabriel, and the next two, the Raphael and the Michael one, are probably my most used angel oracles. I do use them quite frequently for my personal angelic work. So even though they're out of print, they are like the most used ones. Okay, so the next one is the Archangel Raphael Healing Oracle cards, again by Doreen Virtue, again another out of print deck. This is the deck that I use for healing work. And I actually like the artwork pretty well in this deck. It's not, it doesn't look to be, although actually I take that back. Some of it I think is computer generated. I think this is one of those cases with like a lot of these decks where we're pulling in artwork from a lot of different artists and from a lot of different places. But I like it. I think it's pretty good. I really like the keywords, again, because of this is the Healing Oracle card. You'll see that a lot of the keywords really do focus on health. Like here we have, diet is important. But it has these like relationship and second opinion, inner authority. There's an alternative medicines. So it has a little bit of everything that, healing in terms of, mind, body, and heart probably. But I tend to use it a lot for a lot of like physical healing work. So it has the messages directly on the cards. I absolutely never get into the guidebooks for these types of decks. They're in there, but I always there's plenty on the cards, right? We don't need to get into that. Important to note that on a lot of these few decks that I'm showing, there are a lot of references to God and Jesus. I don't have issue with those words anymore because I've changed what they mean to me personally. Jesus to me is just any ascended master, and God is just the divine, in ungendered divine, just the divine. So that's just how I personally have come to terms with those types of that type of verbiage, but it is important to note that a lot of these types of decks too will have language along those lines. There'll be references to God or Jesus or specific Christian terms or biblical terms, and that might not always be everybody's cup of tea. So it's important to note, I think if you're interested in any, you should probably do a full walkthrough if that is something that, you know, you do want to be mindful of. For me, I just change it in my mind, and that's the associations mean something different to me now than they used to, and so I'm okay with it. I can look at it and go, God, yep, that's just the divine. Jesus, yep, that's just ascended master, and it works for me. So that's the Archangel Raphael Healing Oracle cards. That's a mouthful. All right, and the last, I think this is the last out of print deck, and then we just have a couple more oracles. This is the Archangel Michael. This is one of the newer Archangel decks in my collection because it's taken me a while to get my hands on one at a decent price, and you know, just not, it's available for a decent price quite often, but it's just been one that I haven't been like super quick to get a hold of it, but I finally found a good one for a decent price. So, and it's in decent shape. Again, same thing with all the rest of them. We have the nice message from Archangel Michael. This one has a prayer on it. You can use it as a prayer, as a meditation, as a devotion, as an actual oracle message. I think it works quite well in all of those different ways. Some of the artwork is hit or miss. It's your typical, you know, glossy. Most of these are the glossy oracle size, gilded, you know, all the stuff. But it's an interesting deck. And again, I've talked about in a previous video how I work with Archangel Michael in particular, and so I won't go into that here, but I do enjoy the deck and I enjoy the messages. Some of the art I really, really like. Some of it I'm like, that's bad photoshopping. But again, with these types of decks, it's really more about the message and tapping into the energy than it is about, you know, connecting with the artwork. I have other decks that I would definitely use for connecting with the artwork. It would never be a Doreen Virtue deck for me. So here's the backs, which are not my favorite because what is going on there, and it's gilded, but you know, it's cool. It's all about the message, right? It's all about the message and the energy that I'm working with. So that is the Archangel Michael Oracle cards. Next we have I think this is called the Angel Blessing cards, and mine is a vintage copy or an older copy, we'll say, but I do believe that this deck is available now. It wasn't at the time when I purchased it, so I bought it out of print, and very, very used, but it is beautifully used. It is so beautifully worn and patinaed. It's gorgeous. This is one of my favorite angel decks for just kind of generic angel energy, as bad as that sounds. The keywords are really great. I don't know all of these angels, but the guidebook is really quite wonderful. So if I want to get into that, I certainly can. For the most part, I like a lot of the artwork. And as I mentioned with the influence of angels, this is more the art style that I prefer when it comes to angel energy. It works better for me. But the keywords are really great. This is really beautiful with the influence of angels. Let me just, because we're playing and it's a little mini collection video, let me just grab that. Because like you could pair a lot of these decks together, I think as well. But some of them are just like, yeah, some of them are just more beautiful than others, but look at these together. Is this not gorgeous? I mean, we'll just do a little flip through because I love the way they work together, and I love that, you know, as I tend to do with my oracle decks, we get that wonderful keyword energy for the focus in the center. We've got the tarot around it, but we've also got all the angels to pull in that angelic energy into this particular work. This deck is also beautiful with the the Mysteries of Mary Tarot. I use it quite a bit, but I don't work with that in terms of an angelic deck, so it's not in this collection because that is very much a working with goddess level energy in a sense. But aren't these gorgeous together? I love them. I just wanted to show you that real quick because it's just so pretty. So here's the backs of these. Again, mine came in a really, really beat up box, but it has a wonderful guidebook too. And I will check, and I will have links for everything for you in the description box below, but I do believe that this is back available and back in print. So that is the Angel Blessing cards. So the next deck is the Fallen Angel Oracles. Worst box ever. I've got fabric to make a bag. I absolutely detest these box designs where you've got the cards that are just sitting in here with the book. This is horrible. Cards slide down in there, like it's a whole thing. But I gotta make my bag for it. So anyway, the Fallen Angel Oracle cards. Here's the backs. It's very much a digital photo collage deck. But it's got some really cool keywords. And I don't know anything really about fallen angels. So I have, I do like to get into the guidebook a little bit, but it's got really cool artwork and I do like a lot of the keywords. So we have evaluation, honesty, and really it's the keywords that I tap into for this deck. The artwork is kind of more just an aesthetic thing for me. Here we have danger, change and travel, leadership. It's got a pretty good balance of sort of light and shadow words, which I do like. And there's quite a few cards in this deck for an oracle. There's 72. And again, that's another thing that I very much appreciate about this deck. It's got some cool artwork though, and it's got some great keywords. Let's take a look real quick just in the guidebook because terrible box design. There's a lot of stuff going on in the guidebook, but we do get a little bit about the fallen angel in the guidebook. Not as much as I would like, but for a mass market oracle deck, I think it's perfectly acceptable. So you can kind of get a little bit about what's going on in terms of what you're looking at and what fallen angel energy is in here. And I think that's really cool. Real quick, we're just do another pairing because I don't know. I just want to show you real quick a couple of the cool little pairings too. These two together are pretty good. I don't know where, I like stacked them on top of each other and now I don't know where we were, but it don't matter. It don't matter. These work really well together. I definitely use the fallen angels as that kind of focal point keyword. So here we have upheaval and, we're between the moon and the Knight of Cups, right? Yeah. Yeah, it works pretty good together. I like it. I like this pairing. I like this oracle deck when I use the Dark Angels Tarot. It works really well for that as well. And I'm gonna pull in, just like this video isn't long enough, but even though technically not an angel deck, I do want to show you just one more pairing with this particular oracle. And this deck does feel, this is the Heaven and Earth Tarot that I'm pulling out here, and it does feel a little bit like it's not technically an angel deck by any stretch of the imagination. It's the Heaven and Earth. But I do feel like it's a good deck for kind of connecting to that sort of realm as well, if you wanted to just like not have an actual angel deck, but still have a deck that kind of connects to the angelic realm. I think you could use this deck in place of that, which is pretty cool. And these two decks actually work really well together. That the kind of monochromatic, very muted color palette of the Heaven and Earth is a really nice balance to the more colorful, although still fairly muted, cards in the Fallen Angel Oracle. And I think they do work pretty well together. Again, I like the keywords. They work really well as a focal point. I do occasionally like to pull in that fallen angel energy as well, like tapping into the actual fallen angel that's listed on the card. But a lot of times it's just about the keywords. It's got a good kind of light and dark balance going on here, because there's a lot of kind of light and dark balance going on in the Heaven and Earth. And then you see the that same kind of energy reflected on almost like a grungier level, if that makes sense. It's like the, I don't know, the kind of shadowy underbelly of the Heaven and Earth Tarot. It's interesting. I like it. It's a different kind of pairing. They really balance each other quite well, and the energies work together really well. That's the Fallen Angel Oracle cards. Okay, we're down to the last Oracle, Angel Oracle, and that is the Oracle of the Angels. Perfectly on the nose for this video. This is a deck that I have not worked with yet, and to be perfectly honest, I'm not entirely sure I'm going to keep it. It has beautiful artwork by Mario Duguay, who also did the illustrated the Lightworker Oracle by, is that Alana Fairchild? Oh my goodness, I can't even remember. But I tend to use that deck more, and I'm not sure that I need both. This is what I'm getting at. Although this one is an angel oracle. The Lightworker Oracle has a lot of angel references, and you'll see that it's still in order. I do like the keywords on this deck, although they definitely kind of lend, you know, lean more to the positive, as we tend to see with angel decks, right? You don't often see angel decks that are all doom and gloom, unless we're looking at like demons or fallen angels or something like that. The artwork is really, really pretty, but it's also real similar to another deck that I have. So I'm not sure that this one is going to remain in my collection, because I have been tending to lean into the other one more, because it has a little bit, I feel like it has just a little bit more variety in the types of keywords that it has. But this is really beautiful. And it's got that great new Blue Angel cardstock, which is that beautiful matte. I'm just curious because I haven't even looked. Yeah, there's not like a reference to any particular angels in here. It's just kind of, it's just a typical oracle deck that just happens to depict angels. It does say it's healing images and messages from the angelic realm. So like as maybe a kind of generic angel oracle, this might be really, really great, particularly if like the artwork appeals to you. I think it's really beautiful. It definitely feels like up in that higher vibrational realm, which is, you know, where I see that angelic energy. So I like it. I just don't know if I'm going to keep it because I have something else that kind of directly competes with it. But as of right now, it is an oracle deck with angels that is currently in my collection. So that's a look at all of the angel, tarot, and oracle decks in my collection. The ones that are very specifically angel related, or specifically angel related for me personally, maybe not necessarily for someone else. If you want to find out more about how I work with angel energy, I recently did a video on that, which I've mentioned 900 times in this video, and I'll leave linked in the description box below. You'll also find links for everything that I've talked about here today in that description box as well. As always, my friends, thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to sharing with you again soon.